So, this one was put here for me to watch, and this is the one that we're on. It is a TikTok mom commits murder and then goes live to do a dance. So, we're gonna take a look at this because it sounds like absolute madness. I have no idea what's gonna happen. I'm just probably gonna be astounded by the audacity of this bitch. Apparently, this got put in here like toward the end, so we had to rewind it there. I did not know. Unaware. That wasn't me that watched that. Don't worry about it. This is fresh. Freshity freshness with these fresh eyes.
Innocent beings that depend on their caregiver's attention and protection.
Yes, they are.
Above all else, love. But when a mother decides that...
Now, those reasons right there are exactly why I keep saying, just don't fuck with the children and nobody gives a shit about what you're doing with yourself.
Basic necessities aren't worth providing and invited a stranger into their home, new levels of low were reached. What was once private is now being exposed in court for the world to see, leaving a mother and her partner forever haunted by the decisions they made the night of August 8th.
To be clear, when things go to court, they are open to the public, just in general. This isn't because of them. This is just the way things work in general.
Let's unravel the story of Nikki Priest and her daughter Kaylee, a family relationship gone terribly wrong. For many, 18 is an age characterized by monumental firsts. First jobs, first majors, first adult relationships. It's a time to stand on the precipice and look out on the rest of your life and all the directions it could go. But at 18 years old, as her peers were dipping their toes into adulthood, Nikki Priest was plunging head first. After all, the Birmingham-based teen had given birth to her first baby, a daughter. Right?
Okay, so this is in England, which I want to highlight, by the way, because everybody likes to compare the UK and Europe to America and talk about how things like this don't happen in the UK, things like this don't happen in Europe, America fucking sucks because of what you see in the media, even though you don't realize just how minuscule and how rare the things that you're being told are in comparison to anything else, and nobody actually is honest with you in the news about where America stands in things. Like when they tell you things like, guns are now the #1 killer of children and teens. No, they're not. They're not. The only way that even is a remotely true statement is the fact that they include teens. And the only reason that that's even relevant is because you get to the age of 18 and 19, where kids are still technically teenagers, but they're also finally adults for the first time, and they go take a swing at life and cannot handle it and decide to self-delete. Okay? They make it out to be like it's because of public violence, and it's not. It's because of self-deletion.
Bright and beautiful, Kaylee-Jayde was born January 31st, 2017. Like many children, Kaylee was overly active and could be described as a handful. But to those who knew her, she was also bubbly and happy, with a...
Most toddlers are a handful. Okay? And the reason most toddlers are a handful is because most people who become parents don't want to have to do anything. And a toddler is a literal ball of energy that just wants to run around and play and dance all day long, in most cases.
The permanent smile plastered across her tiny face. Before her daughter had turned 1, Nikki had entered a relationship with Dan Gregory, who seemed to enthusiastically take on the role of father. Despite not being her birth parent, Dan bonded with Kaylee and viewed her as his own. The three shacked up at Dan's mother's flat for about 8 months, before moving into...
A flat is an apartment for those who don't understand the terminology in the UK.
Their own flat in July 2019 after welcoming a new baby boy. It's here, in flat 14 of the Kingshurst apartment building, where any illusion of familial bliss would fall to pieces. Just a glimpse inside Kaylee's bedroom could tell anyone this was not a child at risk of being overindulged. The space had no princess canopy, no hand-painted drawings on the wall, no tokens of affection that would suggest the girl was anything more than an afterthought.
Okay, that's actually sad. Now look, the like, oh, no princess canopy. Like, you don't need to have a princess canopy, but like, you're not letting your kids not drawing stuff, and you're not like, oh, you want to put your drawing on the wall to have pictures on your wall. Like, it's thumbtacks, okay? It's not a big fucking deal. This is something that's common, at least here in the States. Your kids draw pictures, and then your kids want to put them on the wall because it's a picture they drew, and pictures go on walls. So they look at it the same way as they do a photograph, and they want to have it on the wall, and you indulge them with putting something on the wall. It's not a big deal. It's not like you're spending thousands of dollars to put a piece of paper that they scribbled on with a crayon on the wall. Okay? This isn't indulgence. This is an example of just, here you go. It's a couple thumbtacks in a piece of paper. Okay, this doesn't sound like some child that's not at risk of overindulgence. This sounds like a child that's at risk.
No, Kaylee's room was barren, completely void of a mother's love. If you
A
were to
barren
enter
room?
the living
Did she even have a bed? Like, is it as bad as that word makes it sound?
room of the flat, you would find a miniature chair and table where Kaylee
Okay.
ate meals, alone and out of the way. Was Nikki simply
That's creepy and weird. Like, if it's the way that it was in that picture where it's just like, here's your table pushed up against the wall with your one chair, so when you get to eat your meals, you eat them separately from everybody else looking at a barren, empty wall, and that's where you eat. That's going to take a child's social skills and drive them into the dirt.
slow to adapt to motherhood, or did her lack of effort towards her daughter point to something more disturbing?
Now, the other question is, was this something that was taking place prior to this relationship or post this relationship? Right, because like that's not clear either. They just said like once they moved into the flat, this is what happened, which would lead you to believe that it's post-relationship, which points to some other issues.
Often, it seemed that Nikki handed off her parenting obligations to others, like her own mother, while she used her phone to post photos, videos, and live streams. Social media and people's view of her was at the center of her life, according to Nikki's sister, Priest. But as often as the young mother updated her socials, one aspect of her life was suspiciously separate from her cultivated online persona, Kaylee. In the world of social media, the
Now, I can see why some people might think that's concerning. However, it depends on how you do it. The fact that she's also kind of sounds like she's pawning her daughter off to her mom to take care of her regularly, right? Makes it bad. However, separating your social media and your internet life from your family life isn't necessarily bad. It depends on your situation, what you're doing, what your goals and aims are with the social media and the internet. Is your presence on the internet how you make a living? Do you take your child to work every day? Right? So there's a certain amount of balance there, and some people simply want to keep their children off the internet because of what the internet is and how people on the internet behave. Because of the fact that there are people on the internet who do not have good intentions and will use the internet to find a target for nefarious actions like child trafficking. So there are certain things that it's understandable you wouldn't want your children on the internet. Okay? It looks like, based on what we've seen in the video, that she at one point had her daughter in her online videos and posts, and then just all of a sudden she disappears, right? Which makes it, once again, an example of not good.
mother could present as daughterless, but IRL, parenting was an outward struggle for Nikki. According to Dan, Nikki would tell Kaylee off about 3 or 4 times a day and had raised her voice on at least one occasion. During his relationship with Nikki, he also noticed marks on Kaylee, but chalked them up to the child's clumsiness. Nikki may not have been the world's greatest mother, but Dan didn't see her in.
So, like, there's posts that they keep showing with her and her daughter, right? So it just makes it look like eventually she just stopped doing that. These stories from Dan make it seem bad. Like, very bad.
mistreating anyone as even a remote possibility. Dan's mother had a different perspective. Lisa Dixon had opened her home to the mother and daughter, and she claimed as Kaylee grew, Nikki's parenting style also transformed. Dan's mother watched as Nikki became harsh and, at times, cruel. And although her son claimed he'd never personally witnessed any violent incidents, his mother had. 6. That was the number of instances Lisa had allegedly witnessed discipline with corporal punishment. According to a former babysitter, it was Dan who doted on Kaylee. He would entertain her with games, bathe her, prepare her breakfast, all while Nikki slept in. But from the babysitter's experience, things were worse when Nikki was awake.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. Especially if this took place as her daughter aged, right? Some people have this weird thing where they don't really want to interact with their child as it's a baby or a toddler, but once their toddler starts to develop a personality of their own, they have an interest in being involved in their toddler's life. Some people have an interest up until that point, and then it just drops off. Some people just don't have any interest at all. It's strange. You created a person. You now need to nurture and raise it.
The mother would use offensive language towards Kaylee and express regret about having her, which would often cause Kaylee to become upset and cry. There's no need.
Well, fucking obviously. I love you, Mommy. Well, I hate you. How's that gonna make a toddler feel? Like, how would you respond if you were like a 2 or 3-year-old, 4-year-old? How would that make you feel when you were 5 or 6 and you started being able to comprehend even better than you did at 4? How is that going to make you feel? Of course she cried.
Because she's only one, the babysitter remembered telling Nikki, but the mother wasn't receptive to the unsolicited parenting advice, according to the sitter. She just said it's her child and she can do what she wants. And
No, you can't. Your child is not your property. Now you can raise them how you want. If you want to raise them religious, if you want to raise them atheist, if you want to raise them homeschooled, if you want to raise them public schooled, if you want to raise them socialized or not socialized. Like, these things are up to you. However, things like, I'm not going to socialize my child, you're making a very antisocial child who's not going to have any people skills, and you're going to make life very difficult. Okay, the way that you choose to raise your child comes with certain repercussions to the way your child views the world, the way your child views society and other people, the way your child interacts with the world around them, including people around them. And it's highly important the way that you raise your child. Now, once again, you may be somebody who doesn't like firearms, for instance. So you don't raise your child around them. You teach them firearms are bad because that's your perspective of them. Nothing wrong with that. The thing is, if your child finds somebody who finds them interesting as a friend or a relationship interest at some point, and then realizes they enjoy these things, don't be surprised. Okay? It's kind of the way it goes, is you raise your child the way you want, but if you don't allow them to experience things and you don't expose them to things, they will find them, and typically they're going to find them more interesting than you wanted them to, because you've made them not allowed to be around those things instead of exposing them to them and allowing them to come to their own decisions about things with their own personality, because they are, in fact, their own person and not your property. They're your child, not your slave.
Nikki had no idea how sound traveled in an apartment building, or what listening ears could overhear. Slamming doors, cries, and the sounds that could be interpreted as physical strikes were allegedly audible to April Cooper, a tenant at the same apartment building as Dan's mother. It seemed even full sentences could also be made out through the floorboards. I'm going to...
Oh, hey, now, isn't that funny? Because then you also have all these people in Europe who like to say that America likes to have these paper walls. We like our privacy. No, that's not the case. Shut up, lying fucks.
End you, April allegedly heard. Then there were incidents outside...
You know, that's not shocking. Like, and here's the thing, is like, a parent who makes a statement like, I'm going to fucking end you, to their toddler, that's not the right response to give at all. However, the parent is also a person. okay? If you say, like, you're having a terrible day, and on top of your just terrible day, you have a toddler that is being a fucking terrorist demon, you might lose your shit and say things you don't necessarily mean. The frequency is what matters, as well as the actions afterward. And we're not going to get that kind of context at all out of this. So I'm not saying that this isn't something that happened all the time. I'm just trying to provide like a, if you hear someone who says this, it's not something that you shouldn't be like, oh, that's fucked up. It's just something where one time isn't the end of the world. It's not a sign of an abusive person. It's just a simple matter of maybe they're just having a bad day.
April allegedly heard. Then there were incidents outside of the apartment where Nikki was in plain view of residents, including an incident in September 2019 when the neighbor claimed
Oh my
Nikki
God,
put
I almost
Kaylee
knocked
into
that
her
over.
stroller more firmly than she should. Eventually, April warned the mother that she would involve social services.
Like she just slammed her daughter into a stroller? Like, Jesus. Now see, and this is why I made sure I pointed out, like I'm talking about in general, when you see and hear people make statements like this toward their children and stuff like that, they're not the statements you should be making. Like, as an adult, you should be more in control of the things coming out of your mouth toward your child than to have that happen. Absolutely. This parent clearly seems like shit, okay? However, I just want people to realize I'm not making these comments about her. I'm making them in general about parenting or raising a child, not specifically this person. If I say it's her, then I say it's her. If I don't specify her, I'm just speaking in general.
But didn't make the call, a decision she would live to regret. But April wasn't the only witness, and the complaints continued when they moved to the Kinghurst House apartment building. From the apartment above her, Charlotte Cliff reported hearing sounds of a crying and distressed baby almost every day. One time, the neighbor overheard the words, "Just say she fell off the bed," from the apartment above.
I just say she fell. Like, yeah, that's not one of the most disturbing things you could hear a parent say to somebody else through the floor, right? Like, holy shit.
But Charlotte claimed there was at least one mitigating factor in flat 14. There would be a male voice when she first moved in, and he sounded more protective, asking what had happened to Kaylee. This was likely Dan. The flat was also allegedly known to host parties. Booming music and the smell of a mind-altering substance drifting from the unit would announce the
Of a mind-altering substance that's fragrant. To talk about marijuanas.
presence of these social gatherings to tenants who didn't get the invite. But Charlotte Cliff saw a more sinister motivation for the raucous at Flat 14. Music played at that volume could drown out anything, especially what Nikki might not want others to overhear. Eventually, Dan and Nikki split up, but it wasn't long before the mother introduced a new man into her life and her daughters.
So this is a woman who clearly can't handle being alone. And she's probably also masking the issues that she has personally with having a relationship in order to compensate for the things in her life that she feels are missing or lacking, that she should be working on fixing and correcting, instead just trying to fill a gap with another person. It's not healthy.
According to Nikki, it was spring 2020 when she started her relationship with a man she'd known for years, Callum Redfern. It would later be alleged that Callum had only been in Nikki's life for a few weeks before tragedy struck. Nikki's sister remembered the relationship starting a few weeks after Nikki split with Dan, and, at least on her sister's side, it seemed immediately serious. Catherine remembered Nikki saying she...
Now, I was going to make comments about this guy compared to Dan. However, it wouldn't work out very well because we need to realize this is a picture of somebody who's clearly out having fun doing whatever next to a picture of her mom who is also out doing whatever, being able to have fun, and this looks like mugshots. Okay? You're not going to have the same kind of ability to take care of yourself do your hair, have a shower. You're not going to look so happy in this situation. But we could also point out things like this, right? Are these hickeys or are these bruises from other things? Because there's here and then here. There's a space between. There's two right there, actually, and there's this here. Is that just the lighting? I don't think so, because the shadow from her face is coming down like this and covering it, right? And you still see it pop in. It's not like this is just on the edge of where the shadow goes away or where a shadow comes in. And this is beneath where this shadow is as well. So those are actual bruises. So the thing is, these are mug shots, but they're also kind of indicative of what she's probably dealing with herself, the types of things she's attracted to, etc., etc., etc.
Seemed immediately serious. Catherine remembered Nikki saying she wanted to have children with him in the future, but it seemed Nikki's relationship with Callum had no impact on how the mother treated her daughter. On July 7th, 2020, the babysitter claimed she witnessed a tense encounter. She claimed Kaylee covered her baby brother's head with a blanket and loudly expressed being hungry when Nikki snapped and made physical contact. The mother then alleged...
What the fuck? So why did she cover her brother's... See, and like, especially for a little girl, this is strange behavior, right? Because little girls typically have a sibling and they're very nurturing toward that sibling. In a general sense, every kid is a dick toward their sibling at some points. Once again, it's a general statement where little girls are typically more nurturing toward their siblings than little brothers, or older brothers, little boys. So it's just the way that that tends to work out. It's not an always thing. It's just having a little girl who's going to cover her brother's head with a blanket and then say she's hungry after being... How did they phrase this?
And loudly expressed being hungry when Nikki snapped...
When Nikki snapped and made physical contact. So if Nikki snapped and made physical contact, what was that to? Was that physical contact to Kaylee? And Kaylee's response was, I'm going to hide my brother and say I'm hungry? Or did she snap and make physical contact with the baby, and Kaylee said, I should protect my brother, and hid her brother and said, I'm hungry, to try and distract her mom from her brother, who she's trying to hide? See, this is type of thing that a toddler will do that's indicative of something that they aren't fully aware of how to put into words, but they're taking specific types of actions, right?
And made physical contact. The mother then allegedly took Kaylee by the arm, bringing her to the bedroom while expressing frustration. I was going to take Kaylee. I was scared of what she'd do while I was gone because of what she'd done while I was there. But I had to walk home, the babysitter said. When she left, Nikki was in the living room with the door shut, and Kaylee was lying asleep on the floor. Callum's friend, Matthew Allport, claimed both Nikki and Callum disciplined Kaylee, but it didn't seem like anything serious. Kaylee would be crying for a couple of minutes, then she'd be okay again, he said. And although Nikki had debt and children to feed, she occasionally splurged. Not on Kaylee, but on the new man in her life. She gave Callum money to buy himself a BMW.
Now remember, they did describe Kaylee's room as being barren, right?
Using the universal credit
What?
she had to live on for the vehicle, according to Matthew. And it seemed Callum was more...
Okay, so everything about that seems fucked up. So she gets a universal credit, which I assume is some sort of government welfare program to help you survive and live, to buy her boyfriend a BMW? What the fuck?
More than happy to take advantage of Nikki's generosity. When she gave Callum the equivalent of over $900 for the car that ended up costing about $300 less, Matthew claimed his friend told him not to tell Nikki about the remaining cash. This alleged deceit, on top of Callum once leading a police chase with both of Nikki's children in the backseat of his car.
Hell yeah, that right there. Great guy, good choice, great partner, great person to say you want to have children with in the future, great person to be a father, definitely a great person to replace Dan with, who apparently was doting, loving, caring, and protective of your daughter. I mean, those just seem like toxically masculine traits for a man to show, like, damn.
Carr made it clear the 20-something had no interest in winning any Boyfriend of the Year award, but it appeared the relationship was destined for nowhere good. It's strange, looking back at the odd TikTok Nikki posted with Kaylee. It's hard to imagine this is the same mother who acted shockingly different behind closed doors. It's even harder to imagine.
No, it's not. It's really not. Like, the thing is, most people on the internet present a side of themselves that is not real at all. It's very fake. It's there to get likes. It's there to get clicks. It's there to get attention. And it's only showing the positive things about their life. This is why my social media doesn't do well, is because I don't give a shit to filter myself into being somebody that just seems perfect. It's creepy and weird. I don't like it.
And that she could be capable of what would happen next. On August 9th, 2020, sirens wailed as medics, law enforcement officers, and forensic experts flooded Stonebridge Crescent. They were all
Wait,
when?
When was
August
this?
9th, 2020.
So we're balls deep in COVID, global pandemic, people, like some nations going into lockdowns and things like this.
Sirens wailed as medics, law enforcement officers, and forensic experts flooded Stonebridge Crescent. They were all heading to one place, Kinghurst House. It was there, in Flat 14, where Kaylee-Jayde met her end. But what had happened to the 3-year-old who was once so full of life? The walls of Flat 14 might not have been able to talk, but video could. And what ceased...
Oh shit, son. There's video footage. Who would have guessed that in the UK there's video footage of a lot of things that went on? I'm just going to throw it out there. There's a lot of cameras in the UK. A whole fucking lot of cameras in the UK. So they probably catch a lot of weird shit going on. They just don't know what they're looking for or how to identify some of these people. And there may be some sort of protection about, hey, we saw somebody doing something on a camera. Let's have an officer go and have a chat. Okay?
CCTV footage taken from the day before spoke to was a mother-daughter relationship that was, at the very least, troubling. If you didn't know any better, you might assume Nikki and Kaylee were strangers forced to take an elevator together. Kaylee stood in the corner, staring at her mother, while Nikki tactfully ignored her daughter, opting to focus on her reflection instead. As they walked out of the apartment building and towards...
That's like straight narcissist behavior, by the way.
...the park, Nikki continued to show no effort to hold Kaylee's hand, talk to her, or even look at her. And by tomorrow...
Now, she made no effort to hold Kaylee's hand, and we have no reason to think that Nikki is this type of parent. However, sometimes kids will refuse to hold your hand, and you have to grab their wrist because you don't want them running around a parking lot, okay? That's just the way toddlers sometimes are, as little tiny people with their own personalities. Sometimes they just want you to leave them the fuck alone, not touch them.
She would never have another chance. Although that's where the video footage ended, there was one person who wasn't Nikki, Kaylee, or Callum who could provide insight into what happened in Flat 14 on August 8th. Callum's friend, Matthew Newport. According to Matthew, the night had started out normally enough. When he entered the apartment, he claimed Kaylee was already in her PJs.
What's normal in this apartment? Because, like, normal and this night started out normal enough. That, like, what is his gauge of normal? Because, like, for me, the night starting out normal would be like I end the stream, I walk my dog, or I don't walk my dog and I work on doing something that I need to get done around my house that I need the sunlight for, and then I walk my dog, and then I eat some food, and then I probably just do some other stupid, pointless shit for a while. The thing is, that's a normal thing for me, is like slamming back a 12-pack and then doing shots a normal night in that house while your daughter's just left on her own in a room that's empty with no toys, no friends, nothing ever, nobody ever giving her any kind of attention, affection, or socialization. Is that what's normal in that household? The word normal changes based on the situation and the circumstances, is my point. It could have been one of those examples, or literally anywhere in between or literally beyond what I gave as examples. All right?
Pink and white. She was sitting at her separate table eating a dinner of frozen food. From Matthew's recollection, after finishing her meal, Kaylee played around the house as the adults smoked on the balcony. At 7 p.m., as Matthew sat in the living room and Nikki was still on the balcony, he claimed Callum put Kaylee to bed, which took about 10 minutes. Callum's friend recalled hearing muffled voices when Nikki joined Callum in Kaylee's room. As for what they were talking about, Matthew had no clue. Callum and Nikki spent alone time in Nikki's room while Kaylee rattled the stair gate that closed off her bedroom, asking to be let out to play. Her requests were apparently ignored.
Why the fuck? Like, you went in there to put Kaylee to bed, which took about 10 minutes, and then Nikki came in, and then you guys start talking, and then Kaylee's not in there anymore, and you guys are in there for alone time. What in the fuck is any of that? Like, that's just all fucking weird right there.
Kaylee abandoned the stair for bed, but sometime later, Callum was allegedly shouting from the hallway, "Nikki, Nikki, Kaylee's being sick." Matthew heard the sound of a bath being run as Nikki changed the sheets, but throughout the half-hour cleanup, Matthew claimed he never saw what Nikki and Callum were doing, and when he thought about it, he never heard Kaylee get sick or crying. In fact, looking back, he couldn't understand why Callum had been in Kaylee's room after she went to bed if Kaylee hadn't made any noise.
See, that's what I'm saying. Like, it didn't make sense to begin with. And then, like, why the hell were they in there, and then all of a sudden Kaylee's rattling with the shit trying to get out to play, but it took 10 minutes to put... This dude's story doesn't line up with its own story.
But at the time, Matthew seemed to have other things on his mind. Callum's friend had been in a rush to leave the flat for a while since they had out-of-town work the next day. It was Callum who insisted they stay and chill for a bit. But about 40 minutes after Kaylee was put back to bed, Callum suddenly changed his tune. "Come on, let's go," Callum said. Before they left, Callum stepped over Kaylee's stairgate. "Good night, and I'll see you tomorrow," he said into the dark of the room. But Matthew returned to the flat that night to grab sunglasses Callum had left. From the hallway, he remembered passing Kaylee's room. There were no blinds on the window. Clothing and toys, with nowhere to go, lay in heaps on the floor. The carpet appeared to be haphazardly thrown down with minimal effort to lay it flat. And there, on a double bed, slept Kaylee. He could just see her head poking out from under the duvet. She was silent. That's Matthew's version of events. But Callum's...
That version of events raises questions to me, all right? Like, it didn't make sense. The way he laid it out didn't make sense, and him being like, in hindsight, it kind of just didn't add up. In hindsight, motherfucker, what do you mean? What the hell do you mean in hindsight? I'm saying the way you're telling the story, the shit immediately doesn't make sense.
His friend only saw and heard so much that night. Text messages, on the other hand, might say more about the thoughts occupying Nikki's and Callum's heads on August 8th. At 11:17 p.m., Nikki sent a text to Callum saying Kaylee was sick. She also suggested her daughter was irritable, texting Callum that Kaylee would get upset when she went to check on her. "Been sick in bed again or not? Is she not asleep then?" Callum asked. Nikki said Kaylee just felt sick. The mother then changed the subject to express how nice the visit had been. Callum told her he's going to bed, and the two exchanged "I love yous." Nikki also texted a friend that night who was asking...
Weren't they spending alone time in the room together too, though? Like, see... And then they just start texting about this fucking situation of her being sick. Like, see, it doesn't... It just screams like, hey, let's make this sound like something it's not. From beginning to end.
...her for personal advice about a friend. "I know how you are feeling, girl. I will talk all night," Nikki said. Was Nikki really so blissfully unaware of the horrors that tomorrow would bring? But there were also older text messages that hinted Nikki and Callum might not be so...
Why do I care so much what people think about me? I think I'm gay.
In an older message to Callum,
No one cares.
Nikki said Kaylee made her intentionally injure her hand. "I want to end some..." the mother said.
How the hell do you end up fucking up your hand because of a toddler? Like, how do you do that? Are you that incapable? "Oh, I fucked up my hand because of Kaylee." How? Like, the toddler damn sure didn't throw anything at you hard enough to hurt your hand when you caught it. Like, were you laying on the ground and she jumped on your hand? That might hurt a bit, but it's not going to destroy you. Like, in the videos and shit, she's clearly not an obese child, right? Like, come on now. How the hell did you fuck up your hand and blame it on this toddler?
In another exchange, Callum said, "It was a shame that they hadn't met earlier, as the baby could have been his. Never too late. I want to have a girl," Nikki replied.
Yeah. What difference does it make if it's yours if you care about the child and you care about the mother? Like, if you care about the mother and the mother already has a child, it shouldn't matter anyways. It's that simple, to be quite honest. This is creepy and weird and, like, controlling in a way.
"I want a girl too, babe, especially with your looks," Callum said. Were these just
The fuck?
light-hearted texts between...
That's creepy too. I want a girl too, babe, especially with your looks. I want our little girl to look like the woman I fuck. That's fucking weird. That isn't only weird, that's real goddamn creepy. What in the fuck is going on behind closed doors that we don't know about? Probably nothing good at all.
the couple, or did they expose a motivation for not wanting to have a daughter? After all, Kaylee hadn't just passed away. Someone had cut the toddler's life short. According to a pediatric surgeon from a local children's hospital, the degree of force needed to inflict injuries that Kaylee succumbed to would need to be very high. "I've only seen one similar, only when an older child was harmed by a horse," he said. In fact, some of Kaylee's...
What the fuck? The only similar injuries I've seen on a child were caused by a horse. A horse. Are you fucking kidding me? What the hell kind of shit did you do to this child?
Injuries were sustained weeks before August 8th. Injuries her mother never sought medical aid for. Whatever the cause, whoever caused it, it would be apparent to anybody, that this little girl is desperately ill, pediatrician Dr. Julie Evans said. If treated, experts agreed Kaylee's injuries would have been survivable. But although Kaylee's life could have ended anywhere between 11 p.m. and 11 a.m., when Nikki called emergency services at 11:11 a.m., the toddler had already passed. All of this raised suspicion that...
A 12-hour window for when the toddler had passed when they got there and she had already passed. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the first 12 hours, aren't there certain signs that you could possibly see to be like, yeah, this kid's been dead a while?
That Nikki wasn't just inept in her mind, she was calculated. On May 21st, 2020, Nikki texted Callum point blank, "I'm going to end her." "Why?" asked Callum.
The
"She
fuck?
keeps leaving the living room or giving her in the kitchen, and I'm sick of it. I've striked her nappy." "Good, give her one from me," Callum said. "I will."
Now, a nappy is a diaper. I hit her for shitting in her diaper. So you're trying to potty train your kid, and your response to, hey, you didn't make it to the toilet, is to hit him? Like, I'm just going to point out the fact that that's not how the fuck you potty train a toddler. At all. There are several different methods for this to work out. That ain't one.
"Oh, babes," replied the mother. On August 9th, Nikki...
And, by the way, give her another hit for me. Oh, I will. Don't you worry about it. She's going to get another one. What kind of fucking shit is this?
was arrested on suspicion of willful neglect of a child, and Callum was arrested on suspicion of willful ill-treatment of a child. The two were later released on bail, but were far from proven innocent. An investigation...
Yeah, bail doesn't mean you're innocent. Bail means that you're just able to wander around the streets of a normal society until a trial is completed. At least that's what it is here. I assume it's the same in the UK.
was launched by the local police force. One of the first people on the scene the fateful morning of August 9th was Caitlin Harper, an apprentice paramedic. The door was ajar, and she announced her presence as she entered the flat. Nikki was crying and distressed and called out, "I don't think she's alive." She was right. It was apparent Kaylee had been deceased for some time, Caitlin recalled.
There you have it. For some time, right? It was apparent she'd been deceased for some time. Now remember, she could have passed away anywhere from 11 at night to 11 in the morning. I am sure that medically they are far more capable of narrowing down that time frame than just a 12-hour window that ends 11 minutes prior to finding the body.
She noted the mother was distant from her daughter. Nikki had not been attempting to resuscitate Kaylee when Caitlin entered, as she would have been instructed to do until emergency services arrived, nor did the mother offer her daughter any physical contact.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Like, I wasn't going to say that that's how you would be instructed to do things until medical professionals arrived. However, that is what they do in the U.S., is they instruct you to try to resuscitate your daughter until the medics get there, because if you're not, the odds of resuscitation drastically decline.
When speaking with Nikki, Caitlin was told the mother had moved Kaylee to the floor and attempted CPR when she found her in this state at 10:30 a.m. When paramedic Paul Woodcock arrived on the scene, Nikki was in an entirely different room. It's fair to say Priest was rather upset. She seemed a bit like her thoughts were scattered, moving around, not focusing on anything specifically. She wasn't in the bedroom, she was in other parts of the flat, he said. The only accident that Nikki could remember had happened weeks ago, when her daughter fell off her play table. Nikki claimed...
Tell you what, falling off of that little tiny ass play table, that is damn sure not enough to be as damaging as a fucking horse.
Kaylee had a reduced appetite and had thrown up after the accident, but was otherwise her normal self. But as the extent of injuries became apparent, the flat was soon labeled a crime scene. Shortly after police arrived, Nikki claimed Kaylee had been perfectly fine, up until somebody visited the flat. Callum had spent up to 10 unsupervised minutes with Kaylee in her bedroom, after which Kaylee became ill, Nikki alleged. She believed something had happened.
Oh damn, not me, I'm not the one. I'm not the culprit. It must have been my boyfriend who I keep saying I would love to have a daughter with. It must have been him.
And while she was on the balcony on August 8th, she claimed she'd witnessed Callum strike Kaylee a few weeks before, and she'd heard him do it on other weekends when he visited. And Nikki...
You know, in just the texts between the two of you talking about how you both think she should just be being beaten.
He was adamant she was innocent. I did not end my daughter. I have no reason to lie. At the time, I was scared myself. Kaylee's grandmother found out about Kaylee when Nikki had called her screaming. She was distraught and completely incoherent, said Debbie Windmill. Nikki's mother messaged Callum for more information on what happened. Callum responded, I am just as devastated. Loved her as my own. Only found out a couple of hours ago. I am being told different stories.
Loved her as my own. Meanwhile, in private text between him and Nikki, it's too bad you had her already. I'd love it if she was mine. Why?
I had done nothing other than sob and cry. It seemed her suspicion grew as she later messaged
These
me. Do you know
fucks.
anything? Please do not BS me. I have not done anything but sob and cry when I found out about Kaylee. Nikki always put her kids first. Just hope she is okay. I treated her as my own daughter, he said. Nikki's sister had also spoken.
Yeah, I don't believe any of that shit.
I just broke down and said, what has happened?
Granted, I don't believe any of that shit because we already saw the text that said otherwise from him to Nikki. Like, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Do you think that these lies that you're telling the family are going to hold up? Do you think that the family isn't aware of the way that you treat their granddaughter, their niece, when you're around? Do you really think they don't know? Do you really? Come on.
He seemed a bit shifty. He said, I don't know, claimed Catherine. But all of the ways the devastating news about Kaylee was broken, the way Callum informed his friend Matthew was perhaps the most peculiar. Around noon, Callum and Matthew were relaxing in Matthew's home as Callum used his friend's phone to scroll through Facebook when his mood noticeably shifted. Matthew asked what was wrong. He remembered Callum told him he'd tell me in a bit, but a bit came and went. It wasn't until 3 p.m. when the news was sprung on Matthew. You'll never guess what happened. Haley's passed away, Callum told his friend.
Oh, dude, you'll never guess what happened. This kid died. This kid that's my girlfriend's daughter. She's dead now. What? That's how you do it? That's how you do it. Just finally came up with, oh, you know what? I can't possibly, dude, this is gonna suck. Like, nothing to brace him. Instead, you bring it up in the way that you'd bring up, hey, dude, you'll never guess what happened. So I went to this game, right? And this guy, he hit a foul ball. And it almost smacked the guy next to me right in the face, but I caught it, and here it is. I got the game ball. That's how you brought that shit up.
No further details were given. I was shocked. He said it out like that. And I was like, you what? I thought, why didn't you tell me straight away? We're best mates. Why did you not tell me for 3 hours?
Because he didn't
Callum
fucking know
said,
how to say it in a way that would seem normal.
to wait until there was no one with us. But there was no one with us anyway. I was shocked to think she had passed away early in the hours of that morning, Matthew said. And despite Callum telling Nikki's mother he was devastated, from Matthew's perspective, what happened to Kaylee was at most an inconvenience to his now former friend. All he was bothered about was that Nikki now wouldn't be able to get him another car. He has no job, no money, no friends. According to Matthew, Callum's main source of income, besides the odd job, was Nikki's benefits that he'd used to pay his debts. As suspicions grew over
Damn, I wonder who else would do such things. I could name names, but I won't name names. But I could name some fucking names.
for Callum and Nikki, others were in the midst of mourning the toddler who had never made it to 4 years old. Dan Gregory, Kaylee's former father figure, was devastated by the news of the passing of the girl he had helped raise for 2 years. He started a GoFundMe, with proceeds going towards funeral expenses or a memorial.
Oh, get fucked. He's not doing that. He's putting it in his pocket and going and buying a car for less than he says it costs so that he can keep the extra cash to go probably buy drugs that he's going to do with his friend, who's then going to not say that they were doing drugs, because then he's going to go and like kill a kid in a bedroom with his friend in the room right just next to it, pretending to be that kid making noise later on, and then the friend's gonna not ever bring up or point out the fact that they were high on some sort of substance. I don't know what it was, but high on some sort of substance. That way, all of the strange shit he says actually makes sense to have taken place and to not have registered as being fucking weird and out of place when it happened, because he's not in the right state of mind.
And it seemed like the whole community was grieving for the little girl. Her block was quickly filled with photographs of a smiling Kaylee, along with plushies and balloons to honor the toddler. But someone else was mourning, for all of social media to see.
Oh my god, I'm so sad. Come click on my stuff.
Weeks after Kaylee passed away, Nikki posted a TikTok wiping her tears while lip-syncing the lyrics, "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I know I messed up bad. I should have done better." Compilations of...
Why that song? That's real fucking weird, is it not? Is it not real weird that you would be lip-syncing that, of all things, for the given situation? Now, if that was a song that Kaylee loved, then okay. But we don't know that looking in, right? It just seems like a really fucking strange song to be playing for that reason, or to be singing along with on social media for the given reason. It doesn't look good. The optics of that are terrible.
Of old videos and photos commemorating her daughter were also posted with captions like, "R.I.P. my darling, Mommy loves you, Angel." To her critics, these posts didn't show a grieving mother, but a social media addict fiending for her next dose of attention.
Exactly. That's exactly what it looks like to me. Is someone who's just trying to get clicks and attention so that maybe they can make money off of the situation as well. Okay? It doesn't come off as somebody who's grieving. It doesn't come off as somebody who's sad. Those types of posts are vastly different.
Yet the memorial videos were just a blip, and Nikki soon transitioned into dancing TikToks and makeup reviews. Nothing could bring Kaylee-Jayde back, but could the trial provide justice for the toddler? The prosecution for Nikki and Callum's trial described both of their accounts of August 8th.
Now I'm going to get on here and do some dances on my TikToks and do my makeup on my TikToks. But I'm so sad about my daughter that I got people to follow me and give me attention for a little bit so that maybe I can make a little bit of money off of these posts that I'm going to do when I'm dancing and doing makeup. Now, here's the thing. You do need to move on for your own mental stability, your own mental health. You do need to move forward. But once again, it goes back to what I was saying in the first place. How often were you posting things with your daughter to begin with? Now all of a sudden, because it was stated that she seemed to be fairly absent on your social media when she was alive, and now it's, "Oh my God, I'm so sad that you're gone. Rest in peace, my little angel." And then that's a blip. So you're somebody who seems to not want to share your daughter with your social media presence. You'd rather keep it private, okay? But now you're using her death for attention and clicks and promotion. See, you've clearly crossed some lines more than once, gone back over them to do it again. All right, like, the fuck with these people. Like, narcissists are some of the craziest people to observe. As somebody who I personally enjoy people watching. I am a people watcher. I like to observe people in their natural and unnatural habitats. To me, it is entertaining. Narcissists are some of the most wild ones to observe at all. Okay? At all. And I'm talking about, I go out and observe people, and it's like, what catches your eye, right? When you see the guy who's homeless, who has some sort of mental disorder where maybe he sees or hears people that aren't there, okay? I've seen those guys. I've seen those guys while I'm sitting there and people watching, and they've come over and started talking to me, and it's dangerous. It's legitimately dangerous. They aren't having a normal conversation with you. They're having a conversation that borders on, this motherfucker might be about to attack me. That is not as strange to me as when you're people watching narcissists and their actions, because it's completely different. Somebody with a mental illness that seems like they might be a threat to others because of that mental illness it gives you an edginess, it gives you an alertness, it gives you a sense of like, oh, okay, that's where we're at now. Watching narcissists makes you question a lot of things because it doesn't make sense. They think that this is normal. They think what they're doing is putting forward a mask and a showing of how somebody would normally behave and what somebody would normally do. But if you're actually paying attention, it's fucking weird.
As fragile and full of inconsistencies. Although Kaylee had injuries spanning previous weeks, the prosecution argued the brunt of her life-threatening and inevitably life-ending injuries occurred while the two defendants were in the flat. And whether the intent had been an attempt on ending or serious harm, the fact remained that the parties bore a joint responsibility. Both Callum and Nikki denied the charge of murder.
Once again, Callum was in there for 10 minutes alone, okay? Which apparently was 10 minutes where that's what it took to put Kaylee to sleep, which would lead me to believe Matthew could hear Kaylee, and then after the 10-minute period, couldn't hear Kaylee anymore. You assume Kaylee's sleeping now. Then Nikki was in there, and they were whispering in muffled voices. He couldn't hear what they were saying. And then supposedly Kaylee's rattling a gate to try and get out. But Nikki and Callum remain in the room, spending alone time together for who knows how long exactly. Like, of course they're both culpable. I believe Callum's probably the one who did it. He was probably urged to do it by Nikki because Nikki was trying to have a scapegoat, it would seem. And then the rest is really just history. Like, you can orchestrate having something happen by someone else's hand and still be the guilty party. Look at Charles Manson. Charles Manson never once physically was the murderer. However, he did spend his life in prison for murder.
Callum claimed he had never been alone with Kaylee in her bedroom that night, and although he hadn't been aware of Nikki's mistreatment in the weeks building...
And yes, I'm aware that's the U.S., not the U.K. People are fucking people, okay? The U.K. and the U.S., while we are different, we're both Western civilizations. Are you really going to tell me that decades ago in the U.S. we said Charles Manson, murderer, even though he never physically was the one committing murder? And somehow in the UK that's fine. Today, that that wouldn't be the same, because somebody who wants to make that argument, that is what you're saying. I'm just going to head that shit off right now because you're just going to feed into my anger of people in the UK being like, see, people in the US are dumb when you make that argument. And I see it already.
Up to August 9th, he didn't do it, and that left him with an alternative. Nikki must have. But Nikki's defense argued the only absolute failure in the mother's parenting was letting Callum enter her daughter's life. While
I think there were problems before that, but that was probably the tipping point. She found somebody who was able to be manipulated into doing something because he wanted to do it anyways, and she could just, enable him to do so, and they could both get what they wanted out of it and try to pass it off as something else, but because narcissists, like I said, think they're doing something that appears normal, but it doesn't. It's fucking weird. There's something off about it, which is why I keep using the word weird. Sometimes it's something very obvious. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just like, damn, that's fucking weird. And sometimes it's like, wow, that's not how normal fucking people behave. Okay? That's just the way that it works.
Nikki admitted she had raised her voice at her daughter and, at times, had become physical, she claimed there were limits to her discipline and she would never use excessive force. No, according to Nikki, it was Callum who crossed the line. She claimed he was immediately comfortable with disciplining Kaylee. It started with little taps and then it got worse. You could hear her distress, Nikki alleged.
And I pointed out the bruising on her neck and questioned, do you think that these are hickeys or do you think these are bruises, for a reason?
But the mother had never stopped him. I should have done something for my little girl, but I was scared of what might happen to me because of his aggression. I loved him, she claimed.
See, and once again, this is one of those things that's just like, it's weird. It's weird. Like, you're going to say you should have left him, you knew you should have left him, but you were scared of what he would do to you. Okay, so then where's your maternal instinct to protect your daughter? Where's that at? Are you really more worried about what he might do to you than what might happen to your daughter? See, that's where that line is, where you're doing something that seems normal, because if a person is in an abusive relationship, they tend to not want to leave because of a fear of how much worse things can get. But what she didn't take into account was the very natural and normal action of, I need to fucking protect my kid, which tends to override the desire of self-preservation. So, it's fucking weird.
During the trial, Nikki also went into detail about the events leading up to August 9th. On August 8th, she took her daughter to the park, an outing she claimed Kaylee absolutely loved. And despite what the CCTV might suggest, Nikki claimed she wasn't intentionally neglecting her daughter. She likes to walk on her own. She likes to run, she said. Then they went back to the flat where Callum and Matthew later joined them. Nikki claimed when Callum took Kaylee to bed, he stuck his head out of the doorway to tell Nikki her daughter bit him. Kaylee does not bite anyone, Nikki reportedly told him.
I mean, a toddler in a distressing situation is going to bite you. It just is.
Callum then allegedly disciplined Kaylee in a way that caused her to cry. Nikki then claimed she reminded Callum of Kaylee's age, to which Callum allegedly responded, she deserved it.
None of this reflects what Matthew said, and it doesn't reflect anything else that we've seen in the text between the two of them either, does it? Seems like this is the type of behavior that they would both have exhibited toward Kaylee, not just him.
After they put Kaylee to bed, Nikki claimed she went on the balcony to smoke with the door shut. When she re-entered the apartment, Matthew was in the living room and Callum was allegedly nowhere to be seen. She assumed he'd gone to the bathroom, until she allegedly heard his voice in the hallway.
Didn't Matthew's story say that Callum had very knowingly gone in there to put Kaylee to sleep, that they both knew, like everyone knew what was going on? Isn't that the way Matthew's story was told?
Telling her Kaylee was sick. The mother then claimed she went to see her daughter, who was crying in bed and had gotten sick on her bed sheets. When she asked...
Also, by this point, by the time she went in there, this is after the point where Matthew had said it took about 10 minutes, right? Which I have stated sounds like Kaylee must have fallen asleep at that point in his mind, because he'd stopped hearing any whispering or talking. no more hearing Kaylee or anything, so you would assume she's asleep.
Asked Callum why Kaylee was sick, he allegedly told her he didn't know. Nikki said she then cleaned Kaylee's sheets while Callum gave her a bath. She remembered seeing a mark on Kaylee's chest that Nikki couldn't account for. After the bath, she claimed Callum carelessly placed the crying Kaylee back on her bed. Callum then allegedly asked Nikki to make him tea and pour Kaylee a cup of juice. From the kitchen, Nikki claimed she could hear sounds coming from
What the fuck? What?
Kaylee's room. I heard smacks. I think it was 3 or 5. It was getting louder and louder. I ran to the bedroom and she was holding her stomach. When Nikki asked Callum for his reasoning, he allegedly said Kaylee kept getting out of bed. Still,
None
no
of that
alarm
makes
bells
sense.
were going off for Nikki. I did not think anything of it, the mother said.
Like, this just doesn't seem to add up to what we'd already heard. Like, and if this is the day before, which I'm pretty fucking sure it's not, this shit still don't make any damn sense. Like, none of her story adds up. It's like I said, she's looking for a scapegoat. She's trying to have him as a patsy, and that's what she's trying to frame up.
She left the room, but she claimed Callum only followed her a couple of minutes later. They hung out in the living room. At one point, Nikki went back out on the balcony. She expected Callum to stay the night as he usually did on weekends, but Callum said he wanted to leave. Like Matthew, she allegedly also witnessed Callum step over the gate to say goodnight to Kaylee.
Honestly, it is the same night. Her story doesn't match up one fucking bit. Not one fucking bit. And if a child is sick, why the fuck would you give them orange juice?
She claimed he stayed in the room for a few minutes in silence. She said she spent the rest of her night looking after Kaylee and texting friends and Callum, who kept asking about Kaylee's.
Once again, I believe this would be a cover story that they'd come up with, and that they decided they needed to have this conversation with people so that it seemed to be what was going on.
Condition. Nikki claimed that by about 10 p.m., Kaylee had stopped throwing up, but she continued to check on her. When Nikki woke up in the morning, she said she decided to let Kaylee sleep in. She used her phone, brewed tea, took a cigarette break, having no idea, so she claimed, of the nightmares and flashbacks she'd soon be haunted with from this fateful day. Eventually, she went to wake her daughter up, but Kaylee's arm was cold. That's when Nikki's memory allegedly gets hazy. I just remember dropping to the floor and screaming, Nikki said.
Bullshit. You just don't know how to respond to what a mother would do having found their daughter dead. You just don't know what a mother would do. So you're saying like you don't really remember much because it's easy to get away with not remembering in a very stressful situation. It's common for your brain to do this to you to help reduce the levels of stress and trauma that you go through dealing with it. So it's a common thing that happens. I don't believe her because none of her story matches up at all. It's just her trying to once again appear normal as a narcissist, but making statements that come off as being fucking weird.
And there was one thought she claimed ran through her mind. What's he done to my baby? She phoned Callum. When asked why, she phoned Nikki said, I wanted to know what he had done to my little girl. She claimed she didn't call emergency services immediately because she was scared and she didn't know how to.
Oh, I'm scared, so I'm not going to call emergency services. Instead, I'm going to call the guy who I'm afraid killed my daughter and confront him. Although I'm also scared of what he would do to me if I left him because of the way he's treating my daughter. Now, does any of that make fucking sense to anybody at all listening?
How to approach it. She claimed she knew she had to tell police it was Callum, but it wasn't easy.
Is your
Yeah.
back in stock? It is. Sorry it kept flying off the shelf.
She knew she had to tell the police it was Callum because Callum's her fall guy. It's her patsy. That's her out. She outplayed him in her head as to who the guilty party is so that she wouldn't be punished for what happened because she clearly didn't want to have to take care of this fucking kid.
I was scared to say what he had done. I was scared he might come at me and hurt me, so I did not want to say anything to the police. From the gritty reality of August 9th, everything from the previous night allegedly looked different to the mother. Sounds she'd not understood at the time. Memories that had seemed innocent. The time spent on the balcony, away from Callum, away from her daughter. I have had time to look back at it and see his every move, Nikki claimed.
Right. I've had time to look back on it and I can see his every move. Meanwhile, how many times was he able to just go in there and put your daughter to sleep alone, unsupervised, without you even in the house at all, or without you in there with them at all, and your daughter was fine? Get out of here. You guys planned this.
Callum's defense claimed Nikki was obsessed with social media and was more focused on her phone than Kaylee. To Nikki, her social media presence said nothing about her ability to parent. I like to dance. It does not mean I didn't love my little girl. I have not put on an act once. He knows what he has done, the mother alleged. The text exchange where Nikki told Callum I am going to end her was also brought up. She had been naughty. It just came out. It does not mean I was going to do it, Nikki said. Many of her texts, she claimed, were exaggerations. As for the state of Kaylee's room...
Now look, the statements of, like, I'm gonna kill her, I would side with the majority of the time when somebody makes a statement like that, they're being exaggerative in the moment of anger, frustration, and stress. They don't mean it. Most people make this statement, you don't fucking mean it, right? The thing is, this, like, oh, I hit her, oh, I'll hit her for you too, like, there's too many instances of just casually discussing hitting your kid for it to just be coincidence or untrue or exaggeration. It's happened too many times for that to be the case.
She claimed she was tight on money. I do agree was no place for a little girl, but it was getting done, she said. It seemed Callum was better at getting her to open her pockets. When he, Redfern, wanted a car, he stamped his feet for one, Nikki.
Yeah. Like, for him, it was access to money he didn't have to work for at all. He didn't have to apply for the programs. He didn't have to get approved for the programs. He could just get the money from her because she'd already done that work. Not only that, but he's also not having to work a job to get that money, right? So he didn't have to put any of the work. He's not having to work, and he's still getting access to the money. Yeah. This is why she was able to outmaneuver him into him doing this and being able to try and position herself as if she's unknowingly just put her daughter in this situation and not helped plan or create it. Like, that's what we're seeing has happened here, quite obviously, in my book.
She said. As for those neighbors and witnesses who had given details about her parenting habits, they were liars, claimed Nikki. But
Yes, because for every narcissist, whenever anybody says some shit that's true, those people are just lying. They're making it up. They can't be trusted. There's attacks on their character. They'll do whatever they can to make that person seem as if they're not reliable, and that they individually are as the narcissist because, they're perfect.
Despite Nikki and Callum's refusals to admit any wrongdoing, in the end, both were convicted of manslaughter. Nikki...
Fuck. God damn it. Manslaughter. Now look here, UK. I don't know if you guys do your fucking murder charges the same way we do in the US. I understand first degree might be hard to prove, okay, because they probably discuss this shit in person, like, oh yeah, this is what happened. However, I would say at the very least second degree, where it's not hard planned, but they did intend to do it. Okay? Intended to kill the child, but didn't really flesh out a plan. That's what I would say. Fucking manslaughter is an accident. Manslaughter is like the brakes in my truck went out and I caused an accident and someone died. Vehicular manslaughter, right? It was an accident. It was not intentional. That's fucking manslaughter. This shit here, this fucking story is not a goddamn accident. This actually pisses me off. Fuck that.
He was also found guilty of child cruelty due to the unreported previous injuries and was sentenced to 15 years, while Callum was sentenced to 14 years.
Oh no.
Justice Foxton's ruling, instead of tending to the child, the couple had banded together to stop Kaylee from interrupting their alone time permanently.
Exactly.
And were parties to the...
Exactly. And that's my point. And you're gonna say, yes, you guys created a motive and you had a reason. You didn't flesh out your plan, but it's an accident. How in the fuck did you come to that conclusion and still make that statement, you fuck?
Which caused Kaylee Kaylee her life, said the judge. Detective Inspector Adam Jobson, the man behind the investigation, believes the public might never know exactly what happened that night in Flat 14, but there is an inarguable truth that the trial shed light on. One thing is clear, said the detective. Nikki Priest has failed her daughter. She's failed to protect her, and she should be, being a mother to that little girl, the one person who should have been able to protect her. Although 2 people were found guilty, it's easy to see the trial's outcome as a hollow victory. After all, there's no bringing back Kaylee. But through honoring her life, those who loved her can extend her legacy beyond the events of August 8th. This is the story of Kaylee-Jayde, a child who deserved more than life gave her.
God damn it. Like, that actually made me mad. God damn it. Not today, Satan. Not today. 14 and 15 years? Bullshit. Those jackasses come out and be like, oh, you know what we're gonna do? Look at us. We're so special. We're so great. You know what? We're free now. Here we are, free in the world. What are you gonna do about it? Don't fucking name yourself around me, because now I know your names, bitch. I know your faces. I know your names. I'm not gonna end you, but I will gladly make you regret introducing yourselves to me, because I want nothing to do with you. I don't want you breathing my air. Fuck off. It's literally one of the most fucking irritating and frustrating forms of crime ever, is shit that's done to children. Legitimately mad.